thing on weathering hopper cars. This is kind of the fill-in. This is going to be the end result.
Oh, okay.
There's a picture of the prototype right over there by that train man box that shows the Shaman hopper car that we're replicating. And I'm just going to go into a little bit of how I got there, what my techniques are and what I use. And then Gary brought a couple of his hopper cars, and we'll have him talk about how those went. There's different ways to do it. You know, Western Pennsylvania, we see a ton of coal hoppers, so they're all over the place on your layouts, and this is a good way to get some of that nice, I don't want heavy in color, but not deep through rust that a lot of them got. With the type of coal we had around here with a lot of sulfur and acidic properties to it, it kind of ate through the paint and the metal real quick. So, starting out, I use Liquitex Professional Heavy Body Acrylics. I've seen people do this before using oil-based paint, but that's such a mess to clean up, and I just don't like messing with it. This stuff, I'm not going to say that it works the same as oil, because I'm sure somebody that paints pictures is going to say, well, it's not even close to it. I don't know if it's close to oil or not. For this type of method, it works similar to how the oil works for me. We've got burnt sienna, burnt umber, which are two popular weathering colors, and a yellow-orange azo, which I just picked any kind of goldeny yellow to get some extra color to it. You don't need a whole lot of that.
Which gives it more of the weathered look.
Right, it just helps brighten things up a little bit. Those are a couple bucks at Michael's and other craft supply stores. For brushes, I'm going to be using, I don't even have a name on them. These were ordered off, what's that, Wish? Wish, which is a app for the phone that you can get bulk stuff from China. I think I paid $4 for a pack of 20.
Or at least a gentleman.
And that's just what I'm using for these. One of them I've got is the somewhat soft chisel tip. Not that that's the important part. What I use this for is putting the paint on the body, and it doesn't really have to be anything special. This one I use for the stippling. When we get the paint on there, it's a little bit more firm, but not too much. And then for the actual firmness of it, I went out and got this one. This is a Princeton, and I don't know if that means anything to the art community or not. I found it at Michael's. This one was $2 on itself. You don't have to buy the real expensive ones, but it's got a real nice stiff to the bristles, which will be important. Again, you can buy a pack of stuff at Michael's that's like $3 for a variety, and in there you might have something that's pretty solid. It'll work. This one, I did use this one to do a couple cars as well, so it doesn't have to be real expensive. But
Cool.
okay, again, just my cheap $1 paint palette. Picked that up at the dollar store. In here I've got regular water, a dab of the yellow, a dab of the burnt sienna, and a dab of the burnt umber.
You have them all in one, don't you?
No, I got them 3 separate
Okay.
ones, but they're pretty close to
Like
each
that.
other. And in the middle I've got a paper towel that I soaked in the water and then wrung out till it's just damp. I'm going to start with the chisel point. Again, it doesn't have to be chisel point. I just like using that one because it was available. Wet the bristles of it, and I have another paper towel here that I'm going to press most of the water out. You just want it to be damp. And then starting in with the paint, I'm going to grab a little bit of the darker color. I'm moving it over to a separate separate pocket here, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of the lighter brown color, mix those together in just a touch of water. Just kind of have to feel out how it's going for thickness. You don't want too runny, you don't want too thick. Nice consistency where it's on the brush, but it won't drip off the brush, and it's not build up off the surface really.
Plus it gives it already the weather look.
You want to start with the darker color. We're on a dark hopper car here. I'll stay away from the part I already did. And I just kind of put a big old glob of it on there. I only work about 2 rib sections at a time because it'll start drying on you otherwise. Once I get it on there, I grab my stiff bristle brush and we're going to do something that's called stippling, which is where you hold it at a 90-degree angle to the car and drive it in to the paint and back out, which,
What do you mean?
just like this.
So it actually forces it in paint
Yep,
on the car.
and then it spreads it around a little bit. And,
Okay.
and if you go too hard, you will start pulling it out of the center where it's a little bit
Okay.
damp still.
So you want it for the most part in the center.
Well, you don't. You kind of want even coverage with it, and this will be a multiple coat process.
That's
So
what I was just going to ask. Like, I noticed it doesn't cover the numbers or anything very well
Right.
on the first.
I have a question. Do you dull coat the car first?
this one is dull coated, yes, and I found that that tends to work better than leaving just the raw plastic. Yeah. And you'll get it on there and maybe you find out it's not spreading around as well. You might need to add some more water. If it's just kind of running off the car,
You said the dull
That's
coat
not
is the
good.
clear coat, right?
yeah, the
Now, why do you
Flat
do that
clear coat.
first?
yep.
Why do you do it first?
It helps give, sorry I couldn't hear you. It helps give a toothiness to the surface.
More or less like
It's,
sandpaper.
yeah, it's not
Sucks
smooth
in.
plastic. It gives it something to bite into and hold
Okay.
on to. Same as when we did the chalk weathering.
All right.
Like smoothing it out?
What's that?
Like smoothing it out?
The opposite.
Oh.
Gives a little bit of surface
Oh.
Something to
difference
grab
to it. Yeah,
The gloss will give it a more of a smooth finish. And
right. Which, if you're doing decals or lettering, you want a glossy surface so they can lay flatter. If you're gonna start doing the weathering, usually you start in with a dull coat. It hides the shine to it. It helps give the chalk and the paint something else to grab into.
That's why if you're not happy with most of your work, then you can actually pull it off before you dull coat.
Yeah, more or less too.
Okay.
I think most of them are supposed to look messy.
Okay, get it so you can kind of see the angle to it. So the light's got that.
Yeah, the shine.
See, it's got that texture-y effect to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you pass it around and get an idea of what you're looking at. The texture-y effect is kind of what you're after. When you get to that point, your paint's been mixed well. It's just kind of a balance and a dance of water versus paint and getting enough in there. Humidity affects it, temperature affects it. But you want that kind of bubbly rust look to it.
That's why I'm glad he's going to teach you. This one was weathered first too, right?
Yes. And
you,
afterwards.
You weathered this one?
Yep.
But it does have that rusty, I like that. Rusty dull look to
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, you got the color just right.
Yeah.
Right on those black cars get that reddish,
Oh, yeah.
greenish, blackish.
Isn't that from the coal though?
Yeah. Like I said, the coal we had in this kind of area was very sulfury, very acidic. It just ate through everything that was in there.
Yeah, I'll let you have it because it's actually kind of drying out
Yeah.
already.
Which is fine. We got the first coat on there. It's a little bit light. So we'll just go ahead and... When you're working with a dark car, putting colors on top of it, they're obviously going to be darker since we're not full on painting it.
Yeah.
So this panel, that's one I just did and passed around, is a little bit light on the rust. So the next thing is you start in with some of the lighter, a little bit more of the lighter brown color.
Okay, kind of make it come out a little.
Yeah, just start building up your layers.
And that's why you're the weathering pro.
You don't have to be real violent with the stippling either. And as you press in, it will load the brush with some paint so you can go back over different panels and move it in a little bit more. You don't have to worry about shoving paint right up into the edge of the ribs.
So all you're doing is just dabbing the paint around.
Yeah, I'm just dabbing the paint
And then
on
you're
with this
just
brush.
stippling it in.
Yep, and then I grab this one and just work the spots out.
I like that you can cover up all of the decals.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you're learning how to paint all over again.
Well, I'm not painting like a wall or something like that.
Oh, it's just,
A little bit more detail.
I'm not very good at finding examples.
And then each layer you put on, you want to go a little bit lighter. You start with the darker layers, and you start working up with a lighter color.
Now you do it all over the car, right?
Yep.
Even on the, like the rungs and everything going up the backside.
Yep. We'll hit those here in a minute. And
Okay, sorry,
for
I'm
what
not
you
getting
missed
ahead.
with the stippling effect, you can come back in with an airbrush or chalk, or I brought that stuff so we can do some finish work with it as well. But yeah, each layer up, you go lighter with the color and lighter with the application. The first couple of layers I wanted to go
down first.
right. The first couple layers that were darker, I wanted to go rib to rib with it. And on these ones, it's more about the center of the panel. And then we'll get into some lighter ones where we mix in a little bit of yellow to get a real nice orange color.
Lighter stuff right up by the top of the car too.
Yeah,
Where the rust is actually going to be coming down from.
right.
Okay.
Now that we're a little bit in there, I've got a tiny bit of yellow mixed in with some of the lighter orange or lighter brown.
Yeah.
I'm mixing it to make an orange color. It looks kind of light for rust, but we'll put one spot in the center of each of the panels and start working it in.
Is that Matt? Oh my, yeah, those are my girlfriend's name, right?
Then as you work it in, it just kind of gives depth to your rust panel. It's not all the same color.
So you could even get away with that right there.
Yeah,
Just because it looks like coming right down that second run. It looks
Right.
Like it's kind of falling.
I would probably wind up, I'm obsessive about this though, but I'll work on this car for a couple hours. Usually when I do this, I sit down with 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, you do all 4 of them?
Yeah, and I'll just work them all at the same time.
Oh, it's just an interesting process.
Now, since I'm down here on this lower sill, I grab my smaller brush so I can work it a little bit more directly.
You actually work on the trucks too?
Yes, I will remove those to do them. And we could spend a whole hour talking about how to weather trucks.
Really?
Oh yeah. And we'll just take this spot here, and so it's not quite so bubbly. Spread it around a little bit. You still want that lighter appearance to it. We'll come back in with a little bit more of the brighter orange. Put another couple of
Same type
spots on
thing with
here.
end scale, just smaller.
Right. I will do an N scale car here. Start with the larger one for the educational side, though. I think I said this the last time I was working on it, and a lot of people say it. There's no square lines in nature, so you don't really want to see, like that one's still kind of got a square line to it. I've stippled that just about as much as I can, which is okay though. Just grab the brush. This is why I keep the wet paper towel in the middle. I don't ever completely clean it while I'm doing this, but I'll wipe out some of it. I'll mix up just a little bit of dark. Put it right in next to it. We'll just blend it back in. Go with the harder one. You get some on the ribs, it's not a big deal. Rust goes just about everywhere. And even at that, you can just kind of tab it away here. And there's nothing wrong with coming back over and doing a light wash of some black into it to highlight the corners a little bit. And down here on the side of the hopper bay, we'll do basically the same thing. I've got my darker color loaded up. I'll put a glob on there. I'll cover most of the surface at first. And stipple it in. We'll come back with one of the lighter colors. The only downside to working with acrylic versus oil is the acrylic will tend to dry out quicker.
It could be a good thing though.
It can be a good thing for on the model when you're trying to keep it to the point where it mixes and stays at that the consistency you're after.
Bad thing if you mess up.
Well, it gets a little difficult to keep it the same consistency. So it's the other point of having the paper towel in the water cup, is I can dab into the water and lighten the brush up slightly. Okay, I'm going to let that one go for now until it dries off and we know what it looks like once it's dry. Again, when it's wet, it's going to be shiny.
Figuring so I haven't worked too much more.
But there's the start of it. You can see it's already got a pretty good rust to it. This bay and this panel are wet, but I'll pass it around. You can take a look at how we're starting on that. I'll move into the N scale one. We're going to do the same thing with it. Feel free to ask questions, since I just kind of got my nose down in the work here.
That's what happens.
Is this finished now in that area that you've done?
It could be. I would probably mess with it a little bit longer.
There's a lot more black.
And then I'm going to have Sasha explain how the rust decals can work in conjunction with what we're doing here. You could call it finished, and honestly, if I wasn't, I would almost even consider that done. But as I work into the other panels, I don't want to wind up getting a car that looks like these few panels are this way and the next few panels are another way. So as I work through it, I'll wind up just kind of going back into everything else and making sure it works together. And it doesn't have to be that rusty if you just, start with the darker color and you don't add too much in the lighter above it. It doesn't have to be a complete rust bucket. I'm working on the N-scale car. Because it is smaller, I can do more panels at once before the paint starts drying out on me. And the brush is bigger, so it can cover more panels. And I'm sure Eric would like it if I would finish this one, so he can actually sell it, or keep it, or whatever he's doing.
Yeah, one or the other. Well, you'd take it home and finish it up.
So in like 6 years you'll get it back.
Maybe 7 if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
But it does go faster
What?
in scale.
Ah, yes. Yeah, because I got the whole side with the first coat now.
Bill, you've been working so hard, I'm going to give you my seat because I'm going to leave. If you people will excuse me. Thank you for your
Hey,
demonstration.
no problem. Thanks for hanging out.
You take it easy.
Don't go, we love you.
There's the base layer. So we're going to start with this one. We got the base layer on it. I'll get this out there.
My bottle of water.
I'm going to let that dry a little bit longer just because I'm concerned about pulling some of it off, because that is a brand new car and we did not dull coat it. It's not super gloss, but
Now, can you gel coat that after you
yes,
get it done?
you can dull coat it. You don't have to. The plus side of the acrylic is once it dries, it dries. Like I said with the chalk weathering before, though, when you spray it with the dull coat, it may darken the appearance of it.
Will it disappear?
Yeah. Going back in on the N-scale car with the lighter color.
So you can do more of the boxes with the N scale, right? At once.
Yeah, but at the same time, I like to try and keep it. I'm holding the brush
Still nice.
so that it still kind of fits in between the ribs. What you tended to find was soot and coal and diesel smoke and all the other kinds of stuff that you'd find for weathering would accumulate near the inside of the ribs and give it a darker appearance in there. Now I'm sure, you know, they weathered just the same as the rest of the car, but on this one, the ribs just kind of light. Yes, thank you. What are these called officially? Okay, and they sell these at, you can get them at Harbor Freight, you can get them from Micromark, you can get them from all auto body paint supply stores. They're a little plastic pick that's got a tiny ball of foam on the end of it.
Called micro brushes.
Micro brush, there we go, thank you. You can see on the N-scale car, all the PC lettering is completely covered over with rust. Maybe that's not what we're looking for, so one of these things works really nice to go in and clean off the white lettering. Which again, I'm sure that that's not as white as you want it to be, because that just sticks out like a sore thumb. But then you can come back in and do a little bit of weathering over it, and it's not quite as bad or as heavy as it looks already. And if you wet it a little bit, it helps bring the paint off as long as it's still somewhat fresh. And it even slides some of it around so you get a nice pre-weather. Like I think I'll leave the PC the way it is. It's got a nice orange color to it, but not too much. As far as the logo, come back in with some of the darker paint. Like I said, acrylics dry quick. They're starting to harden up on me here. There. We knocked the bright white of it down. Just a little bit more rust on top of it. And that's basically the basics of it. So, Gary, if you want to show us what you brought in here and talk about how you did what you did. And
Yeah, these were done a little bit differently. Coal hopper. And what I did with this car was I wanted what they call ghost lettering. And back when Conrail originally came into being, they were taking over other railroads such as the Reading and so forth. And they did quick paint jobs on them, and a lot of times this paint they put on would wash off and reveal the lettering. And then I decaled it with Reading decals. Not all of them, but just like here you can see the RD and the Reading spelled out. And once those set, I took 1500 grit wet dry sandpaper and wet sanded part of the decal off. And then I finished decaling it for Conrail, and then I clear coated it to seal everything, and then I weathered it with an airbrush with thinned old grimy black or something of that nature. And that's basically what I did. If you look at it, you can see the Reading showing through the red paint, and that's called ghost lettering. And then this one was a LAF&C car, which again I think was McKean Models. And on this one I carved off the plastic grab irons and added the wire grabs and added the brake line out of some, what's that stuff called? Soft iron florist wire. It bends real easy. And added stirrup steps and so forth. And this one was custom painted. I painted it black and then decaled it. And then the weathering on it was done with a combination of airbrush and chalks. So in order to do that, you have to, paint it, get your gloss finish, put the decals on, and then you have to seal that, and then do your chalk weathering, and then you have to seal it again. And the bad things about chalk is a lot of times you'll put it on and you say, boy, that looks great, and you spray the dull coat on and you look and it disappears. I don't know what happens to it, and then you got to redo it. So it's a multi-step process. I was kind of happy with the color on the inside of that. Now this one I didn't do, my son Chris did. This is a Bowser, I believe. And he started with a decorated car, which was Conrail. And what he did, he wanted to replicate a car that's been in service for a while, so that after they're out in the sun, they fade. They don't have that oxide red color like that Reading did. They fade to like a reddish brown color, I guess. So he faded the paint by spraying it with an airbrush with like 90% thinner and 10% white paint. And that fades the color down, which in this particular case doesn't affect the lettering as much as if you sprayed it with like a red or something like that, the thin red trying to fade it. And once he had it faded, then he puts he put a wash all over the car, kind of like what John was doing, except he used, well, I think it was like a black, dark colored acrylic, and he put it all over the side of the car, and then he would take a damp Q-tip and wipe it off the panels and leave the ribs with that dark color, like John was saying, that the ribs generally seem to look darker. And then he added some rust and so forth. I think on the ends it looks like he used an airbrush to put some wheel splatter on. But that's that one there. And the cold load falls out, it's going to turn it upside down.